Hey, my name is Mike. I am with the Hathora team, and in this video, I am going to give a demo of how to use UBA or Unreal Build Accelerator with Hathora. So to start off, we have a page at github.com/Hathora/UBA, and this has a bunch of documentation and setup steps that we're going to walk through in this video quickly. And if you have any specific questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. So if you look here, we have got some prerequisites. You're using Unreal 5.5 or greater, and you have a Horde server instance running. And so we're going to see that we have over here, I have the source build of 5.5. We can go and take a look at the build.version here. We're with 5.5.3, but you can use this with any version of 5.5, and also eventually 5.6 when that gets fully released. We'll have support for that. If we go look over on this tab over here, we have Horde set up, and we can take a look at help version. And you can see here that we're using the 5.5.0, and this is the change list. This, to set up Horde, there's two ways to get an installer. Epic does release a installer, and you can either download a Docker image by going to github.com/org/epicgames/packages, or just go to /epicgames and click on packages. Then you can see on Horde server here, and they've got a couple of different tagged versions, which can be a little confusing. I recommend just getting this 5.5 one. That would be similar to what I have installed on our Windows server. So this would be a Linux server, which is no issue. Either use the Linux server or the Windows server if you have a Windows server. You can get the installer in Engine Extras, and then Horde. There is a Horde server, Unreal Horde server.msi installer file, which you will get the Windows installer. And that's what I have installed over on our Windows server. Now that you have Horde installed, you don't need to use all of the CI features in Horde to use Horde as a UBA coordinator. And we can look over in our server agents and you can see we have no agents listed here. We're going to set up our Hathora image to be able to do that. Okay, so now that we've got Horde installed, we've got a 5.5 version of the engine. Now we can move on to the setups part of these, the docs on our repo. The first thing you do is we do some engine modifications. We have pull requests open with the upstream repo, and we're hoping to get those into 5.7. And we're working with the Epic team to get those, so we don't have to do these in the future. But for now, for 5.5 and probably 5.6, you will need to do these modifications. So if we go and open up this other page, we have a lot of documentation of why we have to do modifications, and then we have a whole appendix describing what all the modifications are if you're curious. But to apply the modifications, you download this base modifications.patch file here, and place this in the root of your engine directory. So we're going to go ahead and just grab this over and place this in the root of our engine directory. And if we go back to this other tab, you can run this patch command. I believe patch comes with git. And that applies all of the engine modifications that we need. Then there are some binaries that are actually set up with the engine when you run setup.bat, and that's for the UBA agent, which is an executable which gets sent to the UBA agent after things start processing. There's a UBA host which runs on the build machine. Regardless, you can compile them yourself if you want to build them. Here's some instructions on how to do that. But you also have some pre-built UBA binaries that you can use with your 5.5 version. So if we go to this latest release and download this zip file, which I already have downloaded here, you can see we've got a couple of files. Those go into engine binaries, Win64, Unreal Build Accelerator, x64. And just overwrite and replace the files that are in there. when you do apply these, make sure you do apply them to version control. Otherwise, every build machine is going to have these rebuilt, which do not automatically get rebuilt with the engine. Okay, so now that we've replaced those UBA binaries and we've applied the modifications, we're done applying our engine modifications. So now we need to create a image to upload to Hathora. So I have an application here. If you don't have one already, go ahead and create application, give it a name. We're just going to go ahead and click this deploy new version. And so if you follow the instructions in this other README here, you'll see that we have both some pre-built images that you can use, which is a recommended path if you're using an Epic provided Horde server, which means you just installed it using the package on GitHub or that MSI installer that we showed earlier. If you have your own Horde server version that you're building yourself, you will need to follow the other instructions on how to build the Horde agent folder and creating the tarball to be able to upload that to Hathora. But we're just going to use one of these pre-built images, and you can follow these steps, which essentially says, go to your Horde server, check your version. It'll have this version. You can copy that. Then go to one of this link here, which shows some Docker images that we've made, and make sure you find a matching version. Then you go over to the Hathora console, and instead of saying upload tarball, you'll create external registry. For image name, you're going to use Hathora/UBA : and then that version. Then in registry URL, you're going to use GHCR for GitHub container registry.io, and you can leave registry token blank. Go ahead and create build, and this will pull that Docker image and create the deployment for you. Now that it's finished creating the build, you can create a CPU memory profile. We're going to use, we have 15.8, which accounts for a little bit of overhead that is added for bare metal nodes, and but we're going to use 16 processes. So we're going to do 1 room per process, so leave that as is. Then there's a bunch of configuration ports that you need to configure and environment variables, including your server URL for your Horde server, as well as a registration token. And all those details can be found back on the, if you click on this link on the last step, we go back to the main README, and basically you start here on step 3, where we talk about all of those settings. We talk about the ports and all of these environment variables. Okay, so we already have that configured to work with ours. We have idle timeout disabled, so we're going to type disable here. And now we have a deployment that's ready to go. Instead of manually deploying all of these, we actually have bare metal set up here. We can check our fleet, and you see that we have a Washington, D.C. fleet with 128 vCPUs. And so we're going to use that region for our application. So we go back to our application and go to settings. We're going to use this new static process allocation feature, which Hathora will automatically ensure that there will have that many processes running. So we're going to, for Washington, D.C., set a target of 6 processes, and we'll go ahead and click Save Changes here. Now, if we go back to the details panel, you can see that automatically Hathora has started those processes for us. And as those start going up and running, we can see that we have started our process, and we can go back to our Horde and refresh our agents page. And you can see that we now have those 6 UBA agents. So now that we have these agents running, we need to make sure that our build machine can actually use this. If you're using Horde CI, you don't need to do extra configuration. The CI jobs will be automatically configured to use those agents. But if you're using a development machine and you want to leverage those UBA compute, then what we need to do is open up build configuration.xml. Some of this can be configured in default engine.ini. That would be in your project's config default engine.ini. But all of it is configurable in this build configuration. At a minimum, under build configuration, you'll need this allow UBA executor. set to true. I'm also setting my XGE, which is Incredibuild, set to false because I have Incredibuild on my machine. But if you don't have Incredible set up, you can just leave these things empty. But for my machine, I need to have those. Then for your Horde server, make sure you put your public IP. We don't have a domain name set up for our Horde server, but this is where we are set up. Then you're going to set up the pool. By default, if you're following the instructions, this is all set up to a Hathora like this. And you can see here, we have the pool Hathora for that. Then you need a token. So log in as the user, and I am logged in as my user account, and API, VN, admin, and then it's just /token. And this is going to give us a token here that I have blurred for security purposes, and paste that into your Unreal Build tool. You don't need to have these extra settings in Unreal Build Accelerator. By default, I think the visualizer will launch, but I turn that to false. And then this is force build all remote is a flag for benchmarking to make sure your UBA pool is working. You can set this to true when you're kind of testing things out. But normally you would probably want to have this set to false to use your local compute and the remote compute. Okay, so now that we have that done, all we have to do is go ahead and run a build. So I'm here in Visual VS Code, so I run my builds a little bit different, but in Visual Studio or Writer, just do a normal Unreal Editor build. And you could do the Unreal Editor task, or you could do your project editor task. While that gets set up, I am going to run the visualizer. If you did have that set to false, you go to Engine, Binaries, Win64, Unreal Build Accelerator, x64, and in there, you'll find a UBA Visualizer exe. And you can manually run that at a later point. And this will start populating when you see everything starts getting starts running. So you can see here we have connected to our Hathora agents, and each of these suffixes are the Hathora process ID. So if you ever have an issue, you can quickly find it that way. So we've connected to the Horde agent, and then we told the Horde agent to start UBA. And you can see over here, we have compute tasks assigned to all of these agents. And you can go and open up the visualizer. You can do Control Scroll to change your zoom. And you can see that we have Einstein is my local build machine, and then we have all of these other UBA agents working. And we're going to go ahead and just speed this up for you so you can kind of see what a whole build looks like. All right, so now we are finished. As we can see, it took about 32 minutes for us to do the entire build. You can see that we stopped doing distributable tasks at like 30.5 minutes. And that's just because by default, most of the linking tasks are only done by the build machine. There is a flag if you would like to enable that for the UBA agents as well, but it does consume quite a bit more bandwidth. And then there's a dependency graph, and it usually isn't worth turning on. All right, so what I am going to do is I'm going to run this again, but with UBA turned off. All I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to false. Still use the UBA local executor, which is just the same executor, which is kind of like the parallel executor, which is the default. But without using the remote agents, and only use my 32 virtual cores on my local machine, and removing those additional 96 cores that we added through UBA.